So we have not been able to do a wisdom and wine for almost 2 years now. For those that aren't aware that we did this, we have a YouTube series called Wisdom and Wine, the fine art of parenting young children, because it takes so many people and factors to parent young children, and so this YouTube series is really great for families to just watch if you have the time, just to offer a different perspective from early childhood educators. Today our focus is going to be the Great Resignation and how it's affected early childhood. So the teachers weighing in on this is Miss Morgan, who's one of our lead Todd teachers, Jenn, our executive director, and then Miss Tenesha, who's our resident Jamaican health and safety coordinator, and then lead pre-kindergarten teacher.
And Morgan's our parent coordinator.
Yeah, and Morgan's our parent.
She's the lady you want to talk to if you want to coordinate something parent-wise.
Yes. She's kind of like, I would compare it to like the head of our PTA if we had that for a preschool program. Yeah. So I'm going to be kind of walking everybody through the questions and what we want to talk about, but that's our goal. So stick with us.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay. Alright, I think that looks good. I really like the lights.
I just had to get them.
Yeah, I mean,
You could put your phone in there and there's a remote and you could take like 100 selfies of yourself standing up.
Really?
yeah, I think this looks good.
The
I
little
really like
things.
it. Okay. So let's first, what is the Great Resignation?
Who's talking about that, me?
Sure.
Sure.
The Great Resignation. So I've heard it used, I don't know, social media, the news even. The Great Resignation is, people changing jobs, switching jobs, leaving fields, or just not working anymore.
And really, when did we start to see this trend? Let's talk COVID.
Yeah, I mean, let's just have the elephant come on out in the room.
I know,
Stomp,
right?
stomp, stomp. COVID. COVID has had a lot to do with a lot of things. Do I think that COVID is the reason necessarily for the Great Resignation? No. I think that there's other factors. It won't be popular when we talk about it, but there's other factors. But COVID, heck yeah, how could COVID not be a part of any little tiny crevice of anything the last couple of years? So yeah, COVID was a factor for sure. Started seeing it probably, let's see, COVID really got to be a mess February, March of 2019, right? So
No, 2020.
2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020. Because I keep thinking that 21 was this year.
Yeah.
I'm old. I'm 51. So February, March 2020. I think that we didn't see, really it didn't start to hit that I saw resignations as much until November, December of 2020. And then it went gangbusters in 2021. To the point that in 2020 we had 3 W-2s of people that no longer worked with us, and one of them still worked summers, with us. So we literally had 2 people, and for 2021 we had 32 W-2s that we had to stick stamps on.
That's a lot.
And so yeah, that was a gut punch for me as a director person, but we'll get into that. But yeah, it's a big deal.
So let's talk about like you guys as teachers. How's that impacted just your guys' day to day? Obviously, admin is different. We feel it in other ways, but as teachers, you guys feel it as other ways too.
Well, and it's great because they both work admin too.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that they
Yeah.
can see both sides of that. I think that's one really great thing that we have here at YSA is both.
So it impact with me personally, negatively, yeah, it did affect us. But I can say out of everything what happened with COVID, I want to say at least it teaches us like to be more grateful, especially with family wise, and to be thankful for what we do have and what we don't have. We don't focus on the negative kind of perspective, but as a teacher wise, like it touches us because then we haven't seen, because what we had to close down for
4 weeks.
4 years.
Yeah, we closed for 4 weeks.
We closed for 4 very long
Weeks, and us, because we're always here, we always pretty much the consistency, so you're not used to that. So when we really don't have nothing to do, we're like, oh my gosh, we really need to do something. What's happening with the parents out there? That, you know, like,
How's our kids?
How is our kids? How are
I
they
can tell you
doing?
though, on a side note from that, I can tell you what they did, because we currently have 5 infants in our infant room that are staff kids, and we also have 5 more babies coming. Just saying. That's what they did. Hopefully they get a new hobby.
Hopefully.
That's terrible.
It's the truth. Just saying.
I know, one of them's mine.
New hobby.
But I mean, it depends on how you would take COVID. You can take it as it's terrible. I mean, it is terrible. But you can
It's
also
been a-
think about the positive of
It's been a great learning experience.
exactly
Like,
learning
to pivot.
experiments. What did you
Pivot,
do?
for
What did you
sure.
have to do? There you go, pivot.
Yeah.
So
It's been a
Yeah.
great
that's for me.
For me, it is really hard. I teach toddlers. They're not verbal. They don't come in and tell us exactly how their night was or how something big happened in their life. And so without being able to communicate with parents clearly on the needs of
Face-to-face.
these children, the needs of these children, it's very hard to be like, oh, well, so and so really needs this today because this happened last night, and not being able to make those connections for about a year because parents weren't allowed in our classrooms. We struggled, and that is kind of where Jenn came up with the idea of being like parent connections coordinators and things like that, is so that we could figure out alternative ways to impact home life for these children that were very clearly suffering, and also be able to still bring them a piece of the classroom so that they could feel like they were involved even when they couldn't be back there with us.
Right. That's when you came up with like book reading,
Yeah.
the bedtime stories, or
Cookie
ASL.
kits, things like that, ASL, so that we could get you guys interacting with your children at home and that they could come back to school and be like, I did this with my parents, or it just show, because there's like a breath of fresh air in the room when a child has interacted with their parent in a specific way. They come back to school refreshed. You can just see that. And then I think on the flip side of that, it impacted teachers. It made us really like heightened emotions at the very beginning because we were all stressed out. But I think it actually created more forgiving teachers and more adaptable teachers because we had to pivot through that whole entire experience. Like nothing was set in stone and nothing was going to be
Like
constant.
day to day,
Yeah.
even hour to hour.
Yeah,
even.
like it was
Yeah.
just changing so much every day. Like sometimes kids weren't here for 2 weeks, or sometimes we had to shut down a classroom, or sometimes we had to shut down our whole entire building, and we had to pivot through all of this. And I think created a really strong bond with the teachers that were all here and staying for the long haul. I think that it did make it a little harder when new faces came in because we were all ready to like be on guard for each other because we had been through so much. And so it was a little harder and more difficult to connect with teachers because we were like, well, are you going to stay? Are you
a
in
warrior?
this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you
Yeah.
here for?
I
Are
really
you
feel like-
licensing? Are you spying on us? Are we doing something wrong? Like, it just felt very tense in the beginning.
I still feel like a bunch of our team has their guard up and walls up, and that's with good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that comes from having 32 people run through your building in a
We're all
short time
female.
of 12
Which is
months, 14 months.
Literally exhausting.
It is
if you-
exhausting, and you
We're
know,
all emotional creatures. Like, we're
absolutely. And,
literally-
and one thing that's been really strong about YSA is that there's so many that stay for a long time, and so we start to know. We know your husband's name. We know your kid's name. Like we know your routine at
Grandparents,
night.
for
We know your
goodness sakes.
grandparents, and so all of that. And then you have somebody come in and they're brand new, and like you said, you're like, well, show me what you've got before I, extend
can
my
show you. Yeah.
extend my loyalty, I guess, to you. Let me see what you can do.
Well,
And
Young
whether
Scholars
that's right
has
or
high
wrong,
expectations to begin with,
We do.
true.
We do.
and so
And
when
that's very intimidating for
Yeah,
people
I'm
when
sure
they
it
come in
is.
from the outside. I mean, they're coming from someone that's worked here for 3 years. When I came in, I was like, oh.
Huh?
So you coming from the outside in and you see how high the expectations are. It's very intimidating, and you have to be ready to put on your best foot forward and just making sure that you're here for the children and in it for the right reasons.
You know, I think that really kind of breaks it down and defines it. So that's the reason why people, I think, have been in and out at YSA, because you literally do have an expectation that is higher. And now with COVID and there's lots of reasons why the Great Resignation is going on. Yeah, there's unemployment. Let's talk about that real quick. But what I'm saying is, it's more difficult, and you have to actually care. If you're gonna make it, you have to actually care. And there's so many people in early childhood that actually care, and that's why we were essential in the first place, and now we continue to be essential. But I think that there's a lot of mixed feelings about people coming in, because one, you know, you can go work at Lowe's and make about the same amount of money. Is it going to drive you? Is it going to give you passion? Are you going to feel like you've, you know, done something great for a family if you sold a hammer? Maybe. I mean, like, it's possible. But in our field, we're driven by that. You know, we're driven by making an impact. What's happening now in early childhood specifically, in my humble opinion, boomers are leaving. Baby boomer teachers are leaving. They're retiring, you know. And, you know, Morgan and I were talking about it earlier, and she was like, I feel like, you know, it's really embraced now, like my generation. Like, I really feel like I'm really coming into my own. And I told her, I think it's because y'all's generation is what's running early childhood now. People like me and older are leaving.
Well, you guys are stepping into more kind of professor, or
it's being more validated early childhood, that's for sure.
But I see it more like women your age who have been in the field. They're not in the classrooms or even directors. You're crazy to still be here.
Right.
And loving.
And actually doing it. But
That's
people your age and who have been in here, they're doing more college and
or they're coaching
mentor or nonprofits.
No, I agree.
Nothing day to day like you still do.
I totally agree. But here's where the resignation is coming from, and this is why it's impacting early childhood. I'm crazy about this.
You are.
Like, whatever. Boomers are leaving. You know, they're deciding to go do those other roles. They've been in it for so long that they feel like they can be leaders. I have a whole other wisdom and wine on whether or not you should be a leader or not, because some of you are just trying to be pretty in front of a camera. I'm serious. So, but not only that, so you don't have to have a ton of education. You can, and the more education you have to go with a good teacher, the better that teacher's going to be. So I'm not knocking education at all, but you have to know what you're doing, or you have to really care about what you're doing. I think that's the first thing. But so, okay, so these boomers are leaving. And then we also have, you know, everybody's talking about there's all these jobs that are available. Like, oh my God, nobody wants to work. They're all sitting on unemployment. I call bullcrap. Like, I don't think that there's people that are just sitting on unemployment. Yeah, maybe there's a few or whatever.
Maybe there's a few.
But I think what's happening is your generation is currently running it the way that my generation was. Okay? You guys are more like, you can climb up the slide. You know, like, you're a lot more lax
it's
on
okay
how
to wear your pants backwards.
you can wear your pants backwards. It's cool. Do your own thing. Like,
If we
you guys are
accomplish
totally
the same
about
goal,
that.
I don't care how you get there.
But the generation that now is coming in agreeing to early childhood is not your generation. You guys are set. Like, you've decided this is what you're doing, and you're getting really, really good at your craft. The one that's coming in are the ones that could go work for Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. And I'm not knocking that generation, but think about it. I'm going to come in and I'm going to work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. I'm going to have Miss Jenn do a break schedule and tell me when I go on break, and I can't leave the classroom because I can't break ratio, and I have to be there every single day, and I'm going to make X amount of dollars. Or I'm going to go work for DoorDash. I'm going to make $23 an hour, and I'll work for 2 hours because that's all I want to work, and I'll work when I want to. So this is why it's hard to get that generation to come in, because we actually need the day-to-day. And so I feel like if we're going to evolve and grow in ECE, we have to realize that that's a possibility for people. So we have to shift our focus on how we try to get new people in.
Well, and we've done that. in the past we used to have nobody who worked part-time
Yeah.
because
We've become
consistency
so
for children, and
accommodating.
we still obviously have consistency for children in the classrooms, but we have to roll with it too. And now we have part-time people, and we never had part-time people.
Right, because
And
we,
it's
we,
the
we,
norm.
we totally wanted to make sure that it was consistent for children. I can tell you, we don't have any part-time teachers.
Yeah, no, I'm saying our classrooms are still
Absolutely,
consistent.
but so we were able to pivot is what I'm saying. So our pivot was, yes, we can have people come in and float and give breaks and they can share a schedule, or we can do that, but we're going to make sure, at least for now, that our teachers stay consistent 5 days a week and our kids know their routine and what they can depend on.
Well, and like think about, we open at 6. The kids know that Cheryl will be here when they wake up. Like they're gonna wake up, get breakfast, get in the car, and go see Cheryl. They
Yep.
all know that.
Yep.
The early
Yep.
babies. And
Yep.
if the day Cheryl takes off, they're like,
Which is rare.
Oh,
that's
they're
when
like,
their
oh my God,
routine goes
my-
through the window.
yeah.
Yes.
So there's
And that's for kids that don't have any delays or disabilities.
Right.
You take a kid that's got a delay or a disability that counts on seeing Cheryl, you just screwed up their whole week.
Yes.
So, consistency is important. So basically that's the new question in the Great Resignation is how are we going to pivot to continue to draw in Miss Tenesha, Miss Morgan? How are we going to get the next generation of teachers interested in caring for and about children
4 or
Like
5 days a
actually
week.
for 5 days a week?
with keeping that consistency part.
With keeping the consistency. In my, again, opinion, it's people that need care themselves. It's people that would stay home with their own children if they could, but would go a little mad, but want to go out into the workforce, but still want to be involved with what their kids are doing, and still know who their teachers are and what they're learning throughout the week. Those are the ones that come in and are the most successful because they need that. We also have people that don't have kids, and I found that they become successful when they're given a purpose. I think that that's a human thing. It's not a generational thing. And so once we make people feel like they're part of something, they're
So
more
they have
likely
a
to stay.
purpose, pretty
But
much.
getting from point A to point B takes a minute. And then going through that time of, that rotation of all those teachers, it's hard to get there.
It is.
It's difficult to get there.
It is. Because if you think about it, when I came to YSA, I was only an aide. I didn't know nothing. I didn't know safety.
Some of the best
health,
teachers come that way.
And
I love
now,
And you weren't a mom back.
and I wasn't a mom then.
Didn't own a house.
Yeah.
Didn't have a husband.
Didn't have a
Yep.
husband. Just get up, go to work, and go
Yep.
back home.
I was going to nursing school,
Yeah.
and I had a 2-year-old, and I needed childcare for him, and I literally stopped going to nursing school and became an ECE teacher, and I just fell in by chance because I needed preschool for my son.
No, ECE kind of picks us. We don't pick
Yeah,
it.
right, like, you
Their
just-
purpose.
Well, you didn't
Literally.
stay. I mean, you guys had kids 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So you haven't stayed when your kids can go to the state pre-K
Right.
or, well, I mean, your son's in kindergarten, so you technically don't need childcare anymore. But you're choosing to because you
It
see
made
the
an impact on our
something.
lives, and
Yeah.
it's making an impact on children's lives.
Yeah.
And I could have very easily gone into nursing, made tons more money, but I wanted to be at the beginning of life and making that impact, and not the end of life making those
That's huge.
decisions. Like I made that decision and that distinction very early on. With clinicals, I was like, I don't like the end of life. I like the beginning of life and how much fun that is. So
And how important.
It's more fun to get messy with the kids. I mean,
Yeah,
it is.
it is fun.
Another topic to speak about, and we could see how much the Great Resignation has impacted state legislation, is talk about like the new, I guess, rules or ways, group leads and teachers' aides, and
Oh,
just talk about first like basic definition of both.
okay.
buckle up.
Yeah, so a lot of COVID money and a lot of money was passed through Senate to come to Colorado. There's many reasons why that happened, but there was millions, tens of millions of dollars that came into the state of Colorado in the early childhood
In the name
field.
of early childhood.
In the name of early childhood. In the beginning, when the money started coming through, that came from Race to the Top funds. Basically what happened was we revamped licensing rules, and they went from somewhere from like 100 pages to like 350 pages of regulation. They have recently kind of taken that down because some of it was doubling up. So, you know, they were just trying to really make sure, which I get, like, you want to make sure that children are safe, but you still, I mean, common sense has to come into play at some point. Anyways, we created a PDIS system, which is a professional development information system that's going to tie everybody's trainings to whether or not they're group leader qualified. It used to be back in the day you had to have college level courses with education, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's how you become group lead. I don't care if you've been here for 10 years.
And to clarify, a group lead can be a teacher by themselves with children. A
Yes.
teacher's aide aids a group lead teacher and cannot be by themselves.
Cannot, yes. Cannot be by themselves. Group leads can't be by themselves until they go through all kinds of background checks, which Colorado just changed again, which, again, buckle up, here we go. They've made it so the state, they have made it easier and given us more alternative pathways to have people be teacher qualified. Because of this great resignation and because of the lack of early childhood teachers in our state. It's something that's seen across the nation, but this is what Colorado's dealing with.
We were missing 25,000 teachers at one point.
I think it's somewhere around, they said like 30% of our workforce left with COVID. A lot of centers closed down. There's a lot of, now Colorado now pays some relatives to stay with their children, and they're not part of a preschool program. There's a whole bunch that the state did to try to scramble, like, to take care of that. Part of it I understand, the other part I could burn my bra over. So basically, the way that the rules are stated now, you can be in charge of a group of children for minimal amounts of time, let's say up to 2 weeks, if you walk in off the street. No child development, no experience, nothing. That is very scary.
That's scary.
Very scary. Now, this is meant to be used in emergency situations, but so were assistant teachers for years and years and years, and I don't know how many centers have done that and abused that particular
Well, and I
licensing
think the
rule.
2-week statement that's in the license rule is coincidental since, as of right now, COVID is lasting 2 weeks.
And it probably is tied to that. The problem that I have is any director that does not have a moral or ethical obligation to her school, his or her school, could go and take that teacher's aide for 2 weeks and have them run all around their entire school, being in charge of a group of children. And I really, really question the safety behind that.
When they do
and the
that,
teaching
most likely
ability.
for payroll costs, it's cheaper.
It's cheaper. It is cheaper. I mean, here at our school, we made a decision, just right off the top, we're not doing that. Like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Thankfully and luckily, we're not in a situation like that. But I think before we got to that point, I think we'd close classrooms before we put somebody with children that has no formal training to work with them. That's just not right. It's just scary. I mean, there's just so many things that could go wrong. So
How about in the next breath where there's licensing rules that actually say you can run your classroom out of ratio now if you're missing teachers because of illness or call-ins and things like that?
yeah, so you could have one teacher with 24 children. My God.
Could you imagine?
No. I mean, I could actually, because
Right.
back in the day, I've worked for centers that were not so great.
Yeah.
You know, it was 25 years ago, but still, they were doing it. And I can remember being out on the playground of all places with like 30 kids by myself, and everybody would go in to go to the bathroom, and I was like, holy crap, what if somebody falls down? You know, what if somebody's, falls off the slide? What am I supposed to do? There was no phone, there was no walkie-talkies. It was crazy back then. The rock But like now, the thought of doing that after the state was so big on making sure that we professionalized our profession, they're having to water it back down because of this great resignation, and it's really kind of sad.
It's really sad that it's affecting tiny humans.
Yes.
It is.
Because like, I don't know, college level courses, kids' brains are, let's talk about this, kids' brains are developed by 90% by age 5.
Mm-hmm.
Great, cool. College isn't getting seen as much, isn't getting hit with much as an impact when those are 20-year-olds, when their brains have been developed for years and years and years. But let's change kids and everything that happens with them when their brains are still developing.
Absolutely.
Wonderful idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not necessarily blaming the state. The
No.
state is having to pivot. It's mind blowing.
It is.
You know,
It is.
and you know, if anybody at all at state level ends up being able to watch this, like, please hear this. If you want to impact early childhood, impact their money. Give early childhood teachers tax breaks. I hear that there's something in the works that's supposed to be going for this particular tax year that depending on your credential level, you will be able to get a tax credit. So if you're a credential level 1, you get like $500. If you're level 2, you get like $1,000 and it caps. If you really want to make an impact, Colorado, if you really want to make an impact, why don't you work with centers like ours? We're considered a for-profit, which people hate, but they don't understand. Nonprofit gets their money from your taxes, and they're spending more than we are because we're responsible for our bills. Why don't you get in touch with us and let us work together? We'll be a cohort. I say it right now. State, why don't you give my teachers $5 and I'll give them 15, and they can make 20, and we can really do this.
100%.
Instead of creating another website.
Excluding
Yes.
quote unquote for-profit centers.
Well, stop excluding. You're saying, I
The
don't want to
state
sound
only,
negative.
the state kind of only targets Head Starts and CDC.
It's not just that. I feel like we're forgetting teachers. We're
Yes.
doing it so that we can get more people in, but they're not cattle. We're missing the point. Like, the point is that we want quality early childhood teachers, not just the number of early childhood teachers. So make the field prettier
accessible.
for people and more desirable. That's the word I'm looking for them. Make it so that, you know, they don't have to leave to go work in the insurance field because they need the money to pay off their school bill, or, you know, they need the money to raise their kids because they're a single mom. Let them stay in this field, and why don't you help us do it? People are constantly talking about, and I hear it all the time, how expensive early childhood is and how expensive preschool is. One, I didn't tell you to have kids.
True.
You make a choice of where you have your kids.
And how
you
many.
know? 2, come look at my bills. Like, as a for-profit center, we take care of ourselves, we pay our bills, but we don't have tons left over, you know? And that's a misconception. It is expensive to run an early childhood center. It is. We pay for licensing, we pay for mortgage, we pay for payroll, we pay for workman's comp, we pay, you name it. We pay property taxes, we pay
Everything.
groceries, right down to the
Just
gloves
your
and the
paper
masks
order bill.
that we had to have, you know? All of that. We pay for all of that. So if you really, 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 really want to impact early childhood in a positive way, take some of those millions of dollars you have drowning coming into these states. Stop paying the lady that's developing the website, you know, $400,000 a year so she can develop the state's website. Give us some of that money so we can give it to our teachers so we can really, really, really make a difference with kids.
True, and we will take
Mic
it.
drop.
And we will take it. And it's well deserved.
It is.
Well deserved.
It's well deserved. That's one of the reasons why some people leave. You know, going back to that, is that, you know, some people come in and think, I can teach 2-year-olds. Like, it's not difficult. I have a sister.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Exactly. I
fine.
babysat my nephew.
And yeah, I babysat my nephew. I totally got this. Oh, I was a babysitter at the gym. I got this. You know? And then they come in and they're like, holy crap, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, there's
you know?
curriculum,
There's curriculum,
scheduling,
there's
quiz.
assessment, there's, you know, oh my God, they're crying and
And if you can't
you're
get
carrying
tapped
too
out,
much.
you become burnt out.
Oh, we hit our max on that time. So, but that was really good.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
I kind of care.
kind of care.
That's okay. But I agree with what you're saying.
That's the only House bill that keeps getting shut down. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing
I
where it
had
goes
to do it.
directly to teachers, they shut it down.
Yep.
I had to pull, last semester I had to pull a bill that pertained to ECE that either was passed, denied, or still in progress.
Mhm.
And like everyone I was going down, I was like, they're all denied. Like they never made it.
Unless it's universal preschool or something like
Yeah.
that where government funding is going to come in, because what happens is they then go and write grants and they petition. So say Stetson Elementary, they want to run a preschool program. I just got an email this
Well,
morning
that's
from
the
District
thing.
49 asking me if I wanted to run Colorado preschool program.
They run us into elementary ed. It's just this trickled thing. So if it doesn't benefit LED, then it doesn't benefit ECE. Like
Right.
we're not our own component here. Like we have to
Well, another thought, they want universal preschool and pre-K.
yeah.
Do you know how much brain development needs to happen before a kid goes to pre-K? If they don't know how to hold a pencil, how are you going to teach them to write their name?
Right.
Well, they're going to put them on an IEP and get more money.
Because
That's what's going to happen.
It's so hard. If they don't know how to socialize with other children, how are they going to
They'll-
learn from you?
They'll put them on an ILP and get more money. It's all tied to money. A lot of it is tied to money, not all of it. There's always been a disconnect between ECE and elementary ed. I mean, I say that like back when I was teaching, which now is ridiculous when I say it out loud, but how long ago that was. But there's always been a disconnect. We've always thought that it's more important for children to be socially and emotionally ready for school so that when they go to school that they can learn because their brain is ripe for that. But we've been pushed further and further to have them now with 150 sight words before they even hit kindergarten.
Yeah.
I took a nap in
Like that.
kindergarten.
I worked-
literally, yeah.
I worked at a preschool like that. I literally did. Like we had workbooks. We had to do them every single day.
Mhm.
Like it, no question.
Ditto sheets. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I was like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like you have to conform.
There's
you
the
feel
word.
like you have to
There's the
conform
word.
to this norm.
Well, and conform your
because-
teaching style also.
Yeah.
Right, and that's one thing that's beautiful about here is that there's so many different teaching styles and we don't require you to conform. I'm
Yeah.
going to take who you are and your teaching ability and bring out the best of that. I'm not going to turn you into her
Yep.
because we already have her.
We already have
You
them,
know,
yeah.
so that's something that I think is a benefit that we have. But and I think another reason why a lot of elementary ed teachers are so burnt out and so sad is because they're teaching to test, and
Mhm.
that's a whole other thing. But ECE has changed and pivoted to be able to have these kids ready for kindergarten. I do
The
believe
science.
if
We
you
just
teach
learned
them,
so much more about brain development
Mhm.
in the last 30 years than we ever knew. I mean, so
I honestly think though if there was more focus on brain development still and the social emotional aspect, if the teachers at elementary school had the ability to be more focused on that, we'd have a whole lot less teen suicide. We would have a whole lot less disconnect because people that are sure of who they are and are able to say, I'm mad right now and I don't want to talk to you, or I'm sad right now and this is why.
Even child abuse cases.
child abuse
with
cases.
Domestic violence cases is also arguable that it goes
Yes.
down.
I feel like the work that is done in ECE is so incredibly important. It is overlooked, but it's getting bigger. But it's getting bigger because there's more money tied to it, and there's more money tied to it because there's more waste. But every day I get up, feet hit the floor, and I'm like, let's do this because it is making a difference.
We're
But-
making a difference.
Absolutely. But that's the big thing with ECE right now, that if you're gonna make it an ECE right now, and again, it's my opinion, I'm just a director. If you want, you're gonna have to pivot. Because the ones that are coming in are still wanting to make a difference, but you have to show them how they can make a difference. And if you still keep treating them, even at the state level, as cattle, that you're just trying to get a certain number of us in classrooms so that you have breathing bodies, you're not going to make it because they can see through things. I thought y'all's generation was tough, because how much marketing has changed now? How many different social media platforms are there? Because you guys are like, nope, fake, nope, this, nope.
Yeah,
And the ones that go viral and whatever are the ones that are most genuine, right? So the next generation, the 22-year-olds that are coming up right now, that are, wanting to come into early childhood, they can smell it even more than they can see it. So if you're full of BS and you're trying to run a crappy program, they're gonna see it, A lot of them, they come in and they realize it's too hard. They're full of gangbusters, but a lot of them, they don't feel like they're connected.
And we have a couple young bucks
Mhm.
that do a real great job, and so it just depends on their
It's
brain
the-
development and how they were raised.
It does. I mean, well, one of our young bucks was here as a kid.
Mhm.
Actually, two of our young bucks were here as children. One all the way back to 19 months old when she started, and so now she's here as a teacher. But yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. But I think that genuine people are still going to be out there, no matter the generation, and that we in ECE have to look for the genuineness of people. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes we get there and we're having an interview and people say, you're going to have to manage this person if you don't hire the right person. Some people are really good at interviews,
Yeah, they are.
like really good at interviews. And then you
Put
put
them
them
in
out in
the
the,
spotlight.
you put them out there and they get out there and my teachers eat them.
They really do.
You know?
There are people out there, professional interviewers, like that's their niche.
Yeah, like kind of like people that go to school constantly.
Yeah.
They just,
That's their niche.
that's what they do, is stay in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they're out there. There's good teachers out there. I know that because our building is filled with them. We had 2 extra subs today, which is unheard of in 2022.
Yeah, I
you
feel
know?
like we could breathe today.
And we have somebody
nice.
running the office, so all 4 of us can be in here having this conversation to be doing this YouTube video. So it is possible. Some days it's not like that. Some days I'm taking out the trash and
Washing
my
dishes,
husband's washing
cooking.
dishes and we're making it happen. But
You don't pee for a couple hours.
and you don't pee for a couple hours.
The whole day, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something I'd like to touch on if I can. Like, there's so much talk, I think, these days about being a leader in early childhood, and I think, if anything, the last 2 years have taught me how to listen more instead of leading. Sure, ultimately, we kind of come together and we're like, okay, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? And then there's one person that has to say, okay, this is what we're doing. So in that aspect, it's leading. But honestly, like, it has to be more of a collaboration. I also see people saying all the time, don't get stuck in your center. Don't be stuck cooking. You don't need to be the cook. Like, sometimes you need to be the damn cook.
Well, and you don't have a choice. Is
We all
it
do
my
it.
kids get fed, or we order pizza for the
Well,
day?
I get that. And I think
Well,
ultimately what they're talking about there is don't get stuck so that you can't hire because you're in the kitchen every day. And so we have never, thankfully, gotten to that position. But I also think that there's a humility there that a lot of leaders forget. I mean, I remember my husband when he first started working here. I mean, he's been a part of it. But I think full-time he came on like 8 years ago. And I said something. And he was like, you know what? I think you've been the boss too long. Like, you need to learn how to be told no. You need to learn that, everybody's point of view of the school is not the same as yours. They're not seeing it the same way. And that's super huge because you think, oh, we're fine as a leader. You think, oh, we're great and we're wonderful and we're winning all these awards, which we do. But it's not because of me, it's because of us. And if you don't work and hustle your butt off and change and listen, it's not real.
Well, and that's the great thing about having different openers. Morgan's an opener, Tenesha's an opener. You both open differently,
But say the same thing.
but you say the same thing,
Yes.
and we know that because phone goes off 5:30 every day,
Yep.
and our group texts go all morning until we
Yeah.
all get here, and
Yeah, and they end
Life just
somewhere
goes.
around 9
but
o'clock
the
at night.
perspective and connections that Morgan has with parents is different from the ones Tenesha has, and it all somehow works. Even the connections you have with different teachers, it all somehow flows because it's not Jen, you and I running every day. It's
Right.
because you guys have just as much to say and as much to do in the building as we do.
Mm-hmm.
I
I think
the
because the
companies
end
that
game's
are
the
like
same.
employee owned,
Mhm.
I very much feel like we are an employee owned company,
For sure.
or at least I hope everybody feels that way.
Yeah. I mean, your perspective of how things are, my perspective are going to be different from their perspective. It was really cool. like day before yesterday, I can't remember, I was writing down anniversaries, and I'm like, 6 years, 8 years, 3 years, 12 years. Like, it was really cool, you know, to see that. I still, as proud as I am of that, I still want to see new people coming in, because someday you guys are going to leave the field.
Well, and
Someday
they bring
it's
something
gonna
new to
change.
the table that
Absolutely.
everyone here may not have. Like,
Yeah,
That's true.
and how you're parenting your children may not be the same way that a 22-year-old is parenting
They're
their kids.
and it's important to be able to learn from that.
And
like, from
yeah, we
those
need to
people.
know, because
Yeah.
these kids are going to be coming in, and that's going to be our new
That's-
market base. And you know, we're like, well, this worked on my kid. Well, it's not working anymore. That's not what is important
New
to parents
generation.
anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely it's huge.
So it kind of went all over, but it didn't, if you understand kind of what we're saying. And I know that every workforce can kind of relate to being short-staffed. They can relate to people not wanting to work, or the exhaustion of having to train somebody new. I feel like everybody can relate to that right now who's working. This is just our perspective of how it's affected early childhood and how it's affected early childhood teachers. This center specifically really tries really hard to not let the kids see an impact. We try to remain consistent and positive and upbeat, because they're kids. They don't need to be
need the
dealing
background
with
noise.
that.
Right. We
Yeah.
cry in the shower.
Yeah,
it's
they
fine.
don't need to deal
Yeah.
with that. But we really appreciate having an outlet to talk about this stuff. Whether you watch this whole thing or not, at least we feel like we've put it out there, because somebody somewhere relates to it. So,
More to come.
yeah, again, this is our Wisdom and Wine series. Subscribe to it if you want to. Share it, like, comment, all that good stuff. So.
Bye.
Bye.